We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP. Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. Extra Hop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at securityweekly.com/Extra Hop.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Adrian Sanabria. Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. We are excited to announce our first round of speakers. Visit securityweekly.com/unlock to register and check out our rockstar lineup. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. This segment is sponsored by Fortinet. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Fortinet. Derek Manky is Chief Security Insights and Global Threat Alliances at Fortinet's FortiGuard Labs. Derek is an experienced thought leader and innovator who has helped build global collaborative frameworks in the cybersecurity industry. He is a strategist to global leaders and heads of state, builds private-public sector relations, is a C-suite consultant, and a threat intelligence expert on cybercrime. Derek, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Great. Thanks for having me. Yep. Wear a lot of hats, as you said, but it's never a boring day.
Never a boring day. Now, we're going to talk about some of the results of some of your research. Give us a little background. I think you do this on an annual basis. You analyze different threat landscapes and then publish the results. And we'll dig into the results, but give us a little background on the research first.
Yeah, sure. Great. Very happy to do that. I've been, 18 years at Fortinet now in FortiGuard Labs, come from a threat analyst background. And ever since we're founded in 2000, we've been building our own global telemetry footprint. So we have over 6.5 million sensors deployed worldwide in all verticals and segments and geos. And so we're able to get real-time data coming in from attackers that we process every day. Of course, first and foremost, we do this for customer protection, right? We have to build resilient networks that goes into subscription services and mitigation. But at the same time, we're getting a lot of interesting, pings, if you will, a lot of interesting information about attackers. And we're doing these sort of CSI type work behind the scenes where we're doing context and correlation and connecting the dots, not just talking about the what, right? But the why, the how, and sometimes even the who.
Interesting. Now, this research result, the headline is a tenfold increase in ransomware attacks. I mean, ransomware has been all over the news. I mean, that's the big takeaway, but it's not the only one. Give us a little overview and some of the results that come out of the data you're collecting, and where, besides ransomware, what are some of the other big trends we see in the threat landscape?
Yeah, sure. So this is released from, all that data I was talking about, we crunch that on a real-time basis, but this is a snapshot looking at the first half of 2021. And yeah, no surprise, but still obviously very concerning with ransomware. We actually saw the first rise of this back in Q4 last year. It was about December 2020. We saw a big spike off a baseline, a low watermark. It was around a sevenfold increase at that time. And it has just been snowballing since, right? And it's jumped up to nearly 1100%, 11-fold increase. And there's these rising star, there are these new rising star targets in terms of sectors now. MSSP was actually at number 3 in terms of our targeted verticals. That rose quite a bit from the last report, about 5 or 6 spots. And OT, so automotive, manufacturing, energy and utilities, so critical infrastructure also the top targets in the top 5 that we're seeing. So that's just a little bit of framing of what we're seeing on the ransomware, front, and I fully expect that to continue. Basically, attackers got bored of I wouldn't say bored, but they they hedged their bets, right? Not just going after what we saw up until December last year, which was all COVID lures and social engineering phishing campaigns, really going to this shift of focus now in targets, right? So high profile targeted ransom that we've seen. Other interesting trends that we saw in the report included malvertising and scare tactics, right? So this was, ransomware is very in your face, of course. How do they get the ransomware payload onto the systems? We're seeing more innovation on their end now. It's not just the phishing, social engineering lures. We're seeing them doubling down and capitalizing on the work from home, work from anywhere environments. So we're actually seeing a shift from the email-borne threats, and email has been always our most prevalent based threat vector that we've observed for 20 plus years. It's going to web-borne threats now. So we're seeing a lot of heavily obfuscated JavaScript on websites using malvertising, trying to do clever social engineering lures, because employees aren't physically in the office in a lot of cases. So they're doing, things like human resource forums and website impersonations, technical support as well. And there's a lot of scare tactics, being employed for users to click on those links through the web now, which is interesting.
Yeah, I want to dig into a couple of those areas. Let's go down the OT path, because we were talking about this with some of the research that came out that we covered on the last segment. We're running a critical infrastructure resilience benchmark with InfraGard right now. And I presented preliminary results in Cleveland last week at the 25th Congress. And it's interesting because you're also seeing the shift to going after the critical infrastructure areas. I'm just curious, kind of, you talked manufacturing a little bit, energy, et cetera. Are there major shifts in where these attacks are happening? Are there certain critical infrastructure sectors that are more susceptible or under more attack than others? I'm just curious, because I'll give you a side note. The number 4 and 5 on my list of preparedness was actually finance and healthcare, which was surprising. I figured they would be 1 and 2. Right. There were a few other sectors that are doing a little better around preparedness. I'm just curious what you're seeing out of your research.
Yeah, great point. I think we're seeing through the same lens there, because actually, if you in the first half threat landscape report we just released, we have a list of about 15 different segments on there. And I was too surprised when I looked at that. I saw, if you look at finance and banking, it is actually quite low down compared. So all the ones we just talked about, there's at least, so transportation as an example is actually more active in terms of attack activity than finance. So it's really a shift of gears that we're seeing, because that absolutely wasn't the case a year ago when we were looking at this. Finance and healthcare have always been in the top 5 seedings that we saw. And again, when we umbrella this under critical infrastructure, so ICS and OT, operational technology, there is more than a handful, right? We have at least 5 or 6 of those segments that are in that top 10. So big shift of gears. And the other thing too, what's driving this is a couple of things. A feeding frenzy, of course, right? When cyber criminals get a whiff of blood and they get a payday at the end, they're getting deeper pockets. They're going to be coming back for more, and that's what we're seeing, unfortunately. The other part is if you look at the actual critical infrastructure platforms themselves. We did some research on this with our signatures for ICS and SCADA. And it's not just one platform we're talking about. There are a lot, at least 15 to 20. So there's a big diversity theme in terms of the attack surface. Of course, that's growing in terms of different services and providers on the critical infrastructure space. But what's relevant here is we're seeing a lot of attack activity on most of them. It's not just 1 or 2.
It's interesting. Adrian, I wanted to let you get in here because we were talking a little bit about this last segment. I didn't know if you wanted to go a little deeper in the OT side of this.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things I found most interesting in this research is the work you're doing. I think most people are familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework at this point. But I love the fact that you're jumping in there and you're actually mapping current techniques to things on that map, because there's a lot on that matrix, and I think defenders really can benefit from prioritizing that somewhat, focusing on techniques that are the most effective for attackers and the most used.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually just the beginning of this. So we featured our TTP map, heat map. So just like those 6.5 million sensors I talked about, we're also able to extract information using the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And that framework, you're right, the framework, it can be overwhelming. Like anything in threat intelligence, it can easily be overwhelming if you just look at the wide scope and everything that's happening. It's like boiling the ocean, right? You look at all, how do you find that needle in the haystack? Like you said, how do you respond to it? Even the MITRE ATT&CK framework itself has over, 200, well over 200 TTPs. So what we've done is just boiled that down into what are the ones that are actually red, right? What are the ones that are the most prevalent that we're seeing, and bringing that down between things like defense evasion. That's one of the tactics. No surprise. We're seeing a lot of, heavy activity from attackers on, but by that same lens, knowing how they're trying to evade security controls is a great way to defend against it. You're not building a fortress against an invisible enemy in that sense, right?
Well, and to tie into the...
No, keep going, Adrian. Go, because I'm going to go.
I wanted to tie it back to the OT stuff, because I think one of the things that floated up was something that could be quite useful in an OT environment and architecture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And there's, we're also seeing lateral movement as an example. That's part of the kill chain and the MITRE ATT&CK framework, but we're still seeing a focus on removable media as an example, which is relevant in those cases. And the really cool thing here as well is we're a research sponsor with MITRE Ingenuity, so we're working very closely with them on several projects. The Sightings ecosystem is one of those projects that's allowing us to do this. We're just implementing it. But there's also an actual critical infrastructure attack framework too. There's MITRE ATT&CK ICS. So this is something that we're going to be doing even more in the future, looking at with I call it high resolution intelligence, really putting it under the microscope.
Yeah, there's a few points in here I want to highlight, because my guess is guidance moves down a path of the following, and you correct me where I'm wrong, Derek, but if I look at process injection and hooking, that's an application security issue. If I look at privilege escalation, that's an identity issue. And then I look at how exfiltration's happening with encrypted data sets. I mean, that is making sure there's data protections, but also there's the ability to monitor for that. I mean, are those the three? Did I get that close? Like, are those the top three main things organizations should be focused on to start to prevent some of this?
Yeah, I mean, generally we say all of the above, right? But if you, again, so first of all, yes, I really like the way you think, true security professional. This is really, if you look at the TTPs that you just highlighted, they actually stack up within the kill chain still. And absolutely, that is part of it. Like there's the preventative piece on the application side, right? I'm trying, even going down to what we highlighted in the report on the obfuscated JavaScript on websites as an example. That's part of how they're trying to, actually get to that point of code execution on the system. So absolutely. Application security, especially in the new work from home environments where you have all these devices everywhere now, that's acting as a catalyst, right, really to fuel those. So yeah, and that's why we're seeing heavy focus from cyber criminals on those ones that you just pointed as well. But there's still, of course, the further left hand side on proactive and education and all of these things, which, by the way, go full circle with this report, right? When we actually highlight these issues, it's a big education piece so that you can identify gaps in those, hot attack targets that attackers are going after. But yeah, it really does line up to the application identity, and then also, on the exfiltration piece too, when, where is traffic going? And inspecting that, right? I mean, even down to the application layer of protocols, we have the ability to look within those protocols to see, is this really, SSL traffic? Is it a botnet, a known botnet command and control, handshake? So all of the above.
All right, so I wasn't too far off. I mean, oh, well, good. I'm an app user data guy, as I tell everybody, right? And I see these pieces in here, and I'm like, yeah, app, user, and data. Now, I think that, having the ability to see into the protocols and doing proper inspection of the network traffic is probably one of the big gaps right now in some of these organizations, or potentially, right? I mean, SolarWinds went under the cover for a long time. There were not signatures out there, and until those were out there, it was hard for people to detect that attack. I mean, but where do you start? I mean, when you think about it, outside of education, if I have to, guide an organization on what are the top 3 things you could do today, do you have some recommendations on where some of these organizations should start?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, going to that left-hand side I was talking about, again, left-hand of the attack chain or kill chain, the education, so training and education, that's something I always recommend. It's still, when it comes to social engineering lures, and, humans, unfortunately, traditionally have, and still today have always been the weakest link in that chain, right? Falling prey to these attacks. So the education, training on the threat landscape, on being able to identify threats, on having a proactive plan in place, right? What happens when ransomware gangs come knocking on your door, because they're probably going to try at some point. That's very important, right? So, and that comes with breach and attack simulation, with penetration testing, with phishing in a good way. So phishing employs skill sets, to hone their defenses, as an example. Moving to the solutions piece, threat intelligence. So having active threat intel reporting, detection, things like SIM and SOAR. So, being able to basically establish a SOC presence is very important. Detection, you can't protect against what you don't see, I always say, right? And then, simplifying things, right? Especially in the new work from home environments, looking at things like SD-WAN, as well as ZTNA. So zero trust network architecture is a big thing today, because it really is going back to that identity piece. You're talking about, obviously, multi-factor authentication as part of that, but who do you trust, right? Really approaching things from a zero trust lens is the best way, and working towards earned trust models as well.
Where I see zero trust really bringing everything together is when I can control access on the network using identity and application, and bringing all those pieces together. You said the term ZTNA, zero trust network access or architecture, or whatever the A stands for, I can't remember. That's one piece. That's a network layer. But you said it, multi-factor authentication. Then do I look at the applications you should or shouldn't have access to? And when I can bring all those elements together, I think I can create a better control grid and make it a little better, as long as you can make it pretty seamless. And I think that's the challenge we're still trying to do, is how seamless can we make it? Any thoughts there? Any guidance on how to make it somewhat seamless for the end user?
Yeah, so I mean that really is the point of the ZTNA solution, is being able to have that seamless. It's essentially being able to apply everything I talked about, even the threat intelligence, right, to application control, that the botnet C2 detection on outbound traffic, as an example. That's all part of that architecture, and that's really why I said it's a hot thing, and why it shines so well is because it does make it a seamless experience. You don't have to go in and try to set up so many different policies and inspection points. So you have everything tunneling through one area from your whole workforce and multiple endpoints. So that's a really important part, and I agree. It's a necessity today, because if you don't have the seamlessness, inherently you're going to have those gaps. You're going to have missed detection points and missed opportunities to apply threat intelligence as an example too.
Yeah, the one big takeaway from my preliminary results so far in the InfraGard survey is lack of resources, people, budgets, and time. And
Yes.
to this point around being seamless, right? They don't have the resources to manage a bunch of different solutions or to manage something that's not easy. They just don't have the resources or the time to do it, especially in the OT side of this. That's the one thing I saw consistently out of my early results on our research is, man, the lack of resources really hurting these organizations.
Yeah, it's been an issue for a while, and it still is an issue now. It's going to continue to be an issue. So having solutions that help to lift that burden especially from a SOC perspective, you have things like SOC as a service now that's offered. Even I know this is always buzzword bingo, but artificial intelligence, there actually really are good AI solutions. We have 40 AI as an example that has virtual analyst capabilities to do a lot of the things that the human eyes might not be able to see and assist with that. By our estimations, it can help fill the gap of about 20 analysts within a SOC doing that sort of day-to-day work. If you're staring at a screen for 12 hours a day sort of thing. So it's there are things to help with that, especially through automation and all those things, but it's a necessity today.
Yeah. Derek, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Great. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. To learn more about Fortinet or how to prepare for and prevent ransomware, please visit securityweekly.com/Fortinet. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Next week is Labor Day, so we'll see you in 2 weeks on Business Security Weekly.